It is a legislation that offers duty-free access to hundreds of products to eligible African countries. There are currently 38 countries in Africa that are eligible, including Togo. And so the idea of AGOA was to reduce trade barriers, to incentivize investors to develop export industries in Africa. And this would in turn contribute to economic development, to employment, and to reinforcing democracy and stability, since economic growth tends to, so it fits with other pillars of U.S. policy in Africa. So it was passed in 2000. We have a slide that sort of also shows how it fits in with a progression of initiatives by different presidents. President Clinton approved the AGOA, and then President Bush had several initiatives, including creating the Millennium Challenge account, President Obama had started Power Africa, Trade Africa, and many of these initiatives have the same overall goal of fostering private investment or removing barriers to private investment and trade in order to stimulate economic growth across the continent. Well, let me continue to talk while we sort through the technical issues. We've had AGOA in effect for now more than 16 years, and if you were to look at trade trends, we have seen a growth in. Actually, you would see a growth in U.S.-African trade and then a fall. And a lot of that is due to commodity, and particularly oil trade. And we've seen in the last decade a fall in oil trade, partly because prices have fallen, but more importantly, the U.S. No longer imports as much oil as we used to. So it's really generally better to ignore the oil trade when looking at the impact of AGOA, because oil also, there's not much of a tariff preference. So we tend to talk about non-oil, the growth in non-oil African exports under AGOA. And these exports have roughly tripled since AGOA was enacted, from around 1.4 billion a year to 4.2 billion last couple of years. And the main areas of opportunity where we've seen growth include textiles and garments, where the tariff preferences are very important. And there's some growth also in minerals and in some agricultural products as well. But after 16 years, I think the general feeling is that unfortunately the benefits are focused on a small number of products and a small number of countries. There are not that many countries. Out of the 38 eligible countries, there are a handful of them that have gained most of the benefits. And we, through USAID programs and through our annual forum, we discuss and we look for ways that we can try to help more countries benefit. We've been sort of working for 16 years to try to expand the benefits of AGOA, and are still continuing that effort. But I think AGOA offers a gigantic opportunity that has only been partially taken advantage of. It's really incumbent on the business communities of Africa they're the ones who will generate the production, the products that they can export to the U.S. And so a lot of what we focus on in trade capacity building in some of the work that USAID does through their trade hubs is trying to look at what are the constraints How can we help to improve the environment, to unleash the creativity and innovation of the private sector to take more advantage of AGOA? I would also add the last extension of AGOA was approved in 2015. It was extended for 10 years to 2025. This is important because it provided, so that's the longest extension we've had, so it provides long-term certainty for investors who can, they know that they can benefit from these preferences for a longer period, so they can amortize their investment. But at the same time, when they extended it, Congress also directed our government to begin exploring the question of what will come after AGOA, and exploring the opportunity to move towards reciprocal agreements, free trade agreements. Okay. So I know I don't have that much time. I can maybe very briefly touch on a couple of points. This first slide is just to show how AGOA fits into the different pillars of our policy in Africa. This is actually the policy as articulated under the Obama administration. We have also, and AGOA falls in the economic pillar. There is already beginning, the current administration is articulating their own policy, and they also have an economic pillar. So generally the priorities tend to, there's some continuity with differences in emphases. But you can go to the next slide. This is, as I mentioned, the progression of different initiatives. And it shows that AGOA and the overall objective has a strong history of bipartisan support. Presidents from different parties have built on it with different initiatives. And we often, in recent months, we get the question of, is AGOA, will it continue under the current administration? The answer is it's a law that is in effect until 2025. It's enshrined in law, and there is strong bipartisan support for the overall principle or the overall objectives of this law. So what benefits does it offer? As I mentioned, there are hundreds of products lines. It mentions 6,400. We often group it together with general system of preferences. So you combine the two preference programs, and there are thousands of products that African countries can export duty-free to the U.S. This is an important topic that I haven't really touched on. We have there are eligibility criteria in the law. So every year we review, countries have to show that they're making progress on these different areas: developing a market-based economy, rule of law, political pluralism, removing barriers to U.S. trade investment, and poverty reduction and anti-corruption. There are a handful of countries that have lost their eligibility when they are unable to show enough progress on these criteria. This is just a snapshot of, these are the sectors. You can see there that oil or energy products constitute the largest amount. But as I said, the target preferences are so small, it's better to ignore that. And if you look at the other areas, you see agricultural products, textiles and apparel, minerals and metals are among the largest categories. Okay. Yeah, just going to mention the top beneficiaries. You'll see oil exporters among the top beneficiaries, but if you take out the oil, South Africa, Kenya, Lesotho are among the countries that have benefited the most. This is just to show our trade capacity building efforts in the continent. We have 3 trade hubs in West Africa, East Africa, and Southern Africa. You may be able to speak more to this topic. They manage the trade hubs, and they work in those regions to, in various ways, reduce barriers to trade and investment, both helping to enable the regions to export to the U.S., but also to trade with, in the regions. We also are trying to support regional integration. this is a bit technical. Some of the different ways that we support trade in Mexico. There are different agreements that reinforce, that reduce barriers to trade and investment. The trade facilitation agreement is one of them, focused on customs. I would say, I mentioned that the benefits of AGOA have been limited. There are many reasons for this, and they have to do with reducing barriers or other factors that limit the competitiveness of African countries. Port, the cost and time it takes to go through ports, for example. By some studies, those costs can alone, on average, can cancel out the tariff advantages from AGOA. So you really need to have competitive ports, you need to have competitive energy prices, improve the business environment. On a positive note, I think you see more and more countries are trying to improve their business climate and trying to focus on some of these factors that affect their competitiveness. So I think we do see a number of countries moving in the right direction. When Congress renewed AGOA, they made a few other innovations. In the eligibility review process, they now have a public petition process. They're trying to encourage greater participation by civil society, by private companies, to give us input on the performance of different countries by those criteria that we showed. And we have a bit more flexibility in how we, in granting eligibility or limiting it for certain areas. There is mentioned here, this is a bit technical, but rules of origin for garments and textiles are important to that sector, and AGOA provides, it enables countries basically to import fabric from other parts of the world to sew garments and export them. And that's an important provision that isn't available for a number of other trade preference programs, so it has helped the garment sector. There's also, I want to mention gender. There are provisions in the extension that to emphasize the importance of supporting women entrepreneurship as an integral part of helping African countries expand the benefits of AGOA. So when we have the AGOA Forum, we also make a concerted effort to include women entrepreneurs as part of the Africa Women Entrepreneurship Program to participate in the forum. So every year, the AGOA also legislates or mandates that we organize an AGOA Forum. It alternates between Washington and an African country that hosts. This year it will be in Lomé, probably sometime in August. We are in the process of working to finalize the dates and other information. But the AGOA Forum generally is, the main forum is primarily a government-to-government meeting with all eligible African countries. So there will be 38 countries represented with the U.S. And then there are side events. There's a civil society forum and also a private sector forum where there's an opportunity for private sector and civil society members to participate. And both of those events provide input into the main forum. And there's also some participation in the main forum by private sector and civil society. Next. This just shows the last, over the last decade, the forums that have been held in Africa. The last one in Africa was in Gabon, and then last September we had one here in Washington. This is just to give some context. Last year's forum, some of the main things that we discussed, one of them is best practices in terms of how to take advantage of AGOA, developing AGOA utilization strategies, looking at different areas to help reduce constraints on trade and investment, access to finance, etc. And the other general area was that trying to look at what will come after AGOA. If AGOA expires and we want to move towards a more reciprocal trade preference program, a trade agreement, then to start to discuss how would we move towards that long-term objective. So last year's forum really launched that dialogue. Our U.S. Trade Representative released a report that shared some ideas on that topic. If folks are interested, that's a kind of starting point to understand that topic. Okay, this is just some resources if you're interested in getting involved. There's the AGOA Civil Society Network, and there's also this AGOA info website that has a lot of information about AGOA. There's a statistics, you can click on countries so you can find the statistics for Togo. I think Togo has not exported a large amount under AGOA, but it varies year to year. And I'm going to mention just briefly a couple of other programs that the State Department has, because we do believe that the diaspora communities in the U.S. can really play an important positive role in helping to bridge between the U.S. Business community and people with different experiences here and the countries in Africa. So we have one program called Liberalizing Innovation Opportunity Nations, Lions Africa. If you're interested, there's a website. Just Google Lions Africa, and you can find it. They have different programs to encourage them. I think it's focused also on the information technology sector. And then the IDEA program, International Diaspora Engagement Alliance. Diasporaalliance.org is the website. It has more information. There are ways to help where we try to work with the diaspora communities to facilitate their involvement in different ways. Just in closing, just to add to Ambassador Gilmore's comments, I think that this AGOA forum, we see it as a great opportunity to really showcase Togo and the opportunities as Togo has really made a lot of positive investments in their infrastructure. They're positioning themselves to serve the West Africa region. So this is a great opportunity to, and you will have a gathering of representatives from different countries, private sector, et cetera, to see how things are moving forward in Togo. So we encourage you to also consider looking for ways to participate as well. That I'll probably have exceeded my time. I'll pass it to the next person. And